Everybody, welcome back to another episode of Software Engineering in Salesforce. Today we're going to talk about Jest testing in Salesforce, and obviously it's Jest with our Lightning Web Components. And we're going to work through the first couple Trailhead modules on Jest. If you're like me, I know when Lightning Web Components came out and they announced Jest support, I was really excited and I wanted to learn how to write Jest tests. And Trailhead, I'll be honest, that module wasn't very helpful to me. There's a lot going on, and it's all there. And but if you're like me, maybe you learn better from doing it with somebody or from a video than just reading it, then this video is for you. And I also want to give a quick shout out to the Salesforce Troop YouTube channel with an absolutely fantastic series on Jest testing with Lightning Web Components. And that was the series that really helped me wrap my mind around how the Jest framework should be used. And so hopefully one of my goals is to get more people in this industry writing Jest tests when we do web development in 2022. And it is just everything we do. Testing is just foundational to producing a quality product. So let's just take a look real quick. We're going to hop over to Trailhead and write a Jest unit test. Let's go up here. So first of all, I just want to say we're going to skip over the first two modules on Module 1 is just why unit tests are important. And this is setting up a Jest testing framework. Walk through that, get it set up. Really, you just have to create an SFDX project and go through the steps that are in there. And we are going to go right here. We're going to do these three sections here. And some of these might take us a couple videos. Like today, we're just going to do the first two tests, and then we'll do the next two in a later video. I'm going to try to do a separate series where we focus more on web development in Salesforce, and maybe try to keep those videos a little shorter, do them, and see what people think of a shorter video format. So that said, let's hop in here, starting with Lightning Web. Start with a Lightning Web Component. So we need to create a web component, write a basic test for a sum function, and configure our force ignore. So let's go over to Illuminated Cloud, just see what that's going to look like, right? So first of all, let's just open up even though it's a couple steps down, let's open up our force ignore file, because that's important to understand. And I believe this is always automatically done when you create a new SFDX project, but you do need this test. Tests need to be ignored. So Jest tests are not like Apex tests. They don't run in any Salesforce environment. They run on your machine. So you cannot deploy Jest tests to an org. Your deployment will fail if you try to do it. That said, I would be like force ignore and git ignore, right? So they go in your force ignore, but not your git ignore. It's absolutely critical that your Jest tests are committed to version control and they are saved for the next developer to come along and use them. But you should have something like this in your force ignore file. All right, so let's see. The first thing we need to do, we need to create a Lightning Web Component. And Trailhead for this one is a LWC called unit test. All right, and we're going to say it's exposed in case we want to put it on a UI later. Okay. No. There we go. All right, so we have our new unit test Lightning Web Component. Now we need to create a directory for our tests. So Illuminated Cloud does this for you automatically. New Lightning Web Component JavaScript test file. And it's going to create another directory inside our unit test file like this. You're going to see that dunder tests. And it's even going to create the first file for us in there. If you're using Visual Studio Code, I think you just have to go, create a new directory, and you have to name it with this appropriate syntax, but it's all exactly the same. So for this one, the first thing they actually want us to do is create a new JavaScript file named sum.test.js. Okay. So there we go, and now we need to, so this Trailhead module is also really having us work in kind of a TDD fashion, where we're writing tests before we write our production code. So I'm just going to say import sum from, I'm going to have to go up one folder, from sum. Okay. And right, it's going to be mad at me because there is no sum to import right now. All right, then the next thing we need to do is start our describe block. And describe is how a Jest test begins. First thing we do is we give it a name. So I'm going to say the sum test suite. Then we give it a callback function. And this one is nice and easy. I'm going to say it. All right. And all our tests can begin, you can use the word it or you can use the word test. Same thing. So in Trailhead, they're using it, so that's what we're going to use here. And we're going to say it should calculate the correct sum. All right. So that's a little bit like, think about when you're naming your test method in Apex. Got to give some parens there. When you're creating your test method in Apex, right, you got to name the method, and best practice is to name that method with what that test is supposed to do. So we're going to say const result equals sum 1 and 3. All right. Right, so we just declared a variable name const, and we expect it to hold the value that the function sum calculates. And now we make our assertion, which is going to be expect. And I'm going to say what we expect is the value that is assigned to result. All right. Dot to-be. And to-be is a Jest matcher. And we'll take a look at that. In fact, let's look at them right now. Jest match. So this is your Jest functionality, and the matchers are all the different ways we have to assert things. Way more options than just, assert equals or not equals like we have in Salesforce. So take a minute, take a look at these different ways to assert strings, arrays, iterables, exceptions, lots of awesome stuff. All right, so but what we expect is the result to be 3, right? And if we run this, and I'm just going to run it from the UI. I'll show you next. We can run it. Next, we'll run it from the command line, but because I have other Jest tests in here, it's going to kick off everything. And I just want to, for right now, I just want to run this module. And yep, it failed. And that's what we expect because we actually haven't written any production code right now. So it's right up there at the import statement. It's saying, hey, there's just nothing to import. So this whole thing's going to fail. So there we go. That was our basic. That's a basic Jest test, right? Describe it, hey, and this is, it's a little more straightforward. You're writing tests for just JavaScript functions like in a utility file or something. It gets a lot more complicated when we start testing the DOM and asynchronous updates and all of that. So that's going to be the next video. Today we're just going to write a couple of these. And first we need to do is we need to create coordinate Trailhead wants us to create another JavaScript file just called sum. And because sum just has one function, I'm just going to say export default function sum. Whoop. The curly braces go after the parentheses. I'll give it 2 paren num1 and num2. All right. And we are going to return num1 plus num2. All right. So just about as straightforward and simple a function as we can get, right? And if we go back to our test file, we've imported it. No default export. Yeah, it's default. What are you talking about? All right, let's run it. Oh, well, how about that? Elementary school edition tripping me up. But sometimes these failures are good too, right? So we said we expected 3, but it gave us 4. So our function is working. I am not, right? So because Trailhead wanted us to do 1 and 2, we're going to fix that. Run it again. And just, it is super cold down here. I'm in Massachusetts, super cold day. So if you huddle in and try to keep my hands warm while I make this video. All right, so our test passed now. The next thing Trailhead wanted us to do was look at a couple other matchers. 2B is one you're going to use a lot. But we could, we could also do a couple other assertions. We could say we expect result. We'll say 2B greater than 0. Right? Should be greater than 0. And we expect result dot to be less than 10. I think Trailhead used slightly different values, but you see what's going on here. Run our test. All right, and now everything passed. And just make sure we, because normally I'm pretty command line centric, we can do npm run test unit is another way we could run our tests. That's actually going to kick off all of the Jest tests that I have in my LWC directory. So this is going to take just a little bit longer. But everything worked. And, still kicking off. One failed. One failed. Huh. We're just going to take a look. Fail. Oh, you know what failed? This one, right? That Illuminated Cloud created automatically for us, and this is what we're going to use to test our DOM, but it ran, but there's nothing in there, so yeah, that's going to fail. Okay, so we are all set. We're looking good. And to show you the different ways you can run tests, I'm going to open up my package JSON file. So in your scripts are different commands you can run with, npm.unit test. I use test unit watch, super useful. Just when you start changing the code, your tests run. Test unit coverage, going to give you the exact same stuff like you're used to in Apex. So let's, in fact, let's do that one. We're going to do, back to the terminal. If we do npm run test. And I'm so used to, and then it's colon coverage. Colon coverage. There we go. Now I'm going to get a little coverage report back. And I love that. There we go. So we can see unit test. That's just, we have that one file, right? There's no tests in it. But if we go back to our sum.js function, right, that's got 100% coverage. We're loading. There we go. So now let's go back. So now we need to go back to our unit test. I'm going to close out unit test.js, unit test, package.json. We're not going to use the sum function anymore, so let's close that out. Now what we want to do, let me just take a quick look at the Trailhead syntax, make sure I have everything correct. Run the test. We did that. We are through all of that. We're going to go that again. Now we're going to actually test a Lightning web component itself versus a utility JavaScript file. And so we want to make sure that this web component displays the status, a value with a default number. So what we're doing TDD again, right? So we're actually going to write this first, and we're going to expect it to fail. All right. So we start up here. You can see if you are using Visual Studio Code, I think you're going to need to write this in yourself. Import create element from LWC. Illuminated Cloud just does it for you automatically. That is a LWC Jest function that allows you to create a Lightning Web Component and add it to the JS DOM for testing purposes. Next thing we need to do is import our Lightning Web Component, unit test, from C-unit test. Okay. Now we start our describe block. And I'm going to say this is our unit test suite. All right, now I'm going to go back over to Truehead. I'm going to copy because I always forget the syntax for this because I write mine a little differently. But let's talk about what this is. All right, I'm going to copy and paste this, and then we'll talk about exactly what we've got going on here. After each, right? So we write this after each function, and all it's doing is just resetting the DOM every time. Because next we are going to actually add the unit test component to the DOM. And what we want to do is, because you're going to have, when we're done with this, I think we're going to have 4 tests in this test suite, is we want to reset the DOM every single time for our next test. All right. And there we go. Because it's going to be easier because I forgot to grab that. And then we're going to write our actual test. All right, let's copy and paste that in. And we're going to say it, once again, it. And we're going to say, we're going to name this. And this is thing, like I said, it's like naming your test method in Apex. Should render with the default value. Okay. Once again, we're going to provide it a callback function. Now, the first thing we need to do is we actually need to create our web component and add it to the DOM for the test. So we are going to say const element equals create element. All right. So now you see we're using this create element class that we already imported up at the top. So we are going to create an element C unit test. And then, all right, you need to pass in your is unit test. This is important, right? Because this is how we actually take the markup that's in our unit test file and add that in. Now we need to insert or add our element to the DOM. So we're going to say document.body.append child element, right? So we're going to document the body, and we're going to just append our Lightning Web Component to that. Now what we need to do is we need to select the div that's going to be on our Lightning Web Component when we actually write it. So I'm going to say const div equals element dot shadow root dot query selector, and then we're going to pass it in a div, right? So normal JavaScript functions you are used to, except we're going to use shadow root this time instead of, if you are used to instead of using like document.querySelector, we're going to do element.shadowroot.querySelector to let us peek through that shadow DOM. And in this case, we selected a div, right? But we could be selecting a class. We could be selecting a lightning input, right? Whatever, a P. So in this case, we're just going to select a div tag. And then what we expect is div dot text content to be, and then I forgot Salesforce. We're going to do something like unit 5 is alive, something like that. That's sure it wants us to write something like that. All right, let's run that. like I said, it's going to fail because we haven't actually written a web component yet. All right, so that failed, and that's exactly, it said can't read text content of no, because there is nothing there to be read. All right, so let's go to our unit test. And for this piece, we are definitely just going to copy and paste this markup off of Trailhead. All right, so I'm going to grab this. All right. Right, so now we have a div, class, right, lightning card, unit, and, I've had my test say is alive. And, but there says Trailhead is just alive, so we'll change that back. Unit, that's all we need. Now we need to update our JavaScript file. And we need to first give it an API. We need to import API because we're going to have to create a public property here. Unit number. But, we need to import some too, don't we, also? From. All right. Equals sum 2 and 3. Oh, need an @ sign there. All right. Trying to figure that out. API unit number. So I think we run this. Should pass. Nope. See there. This is the good little feedback, and this is what I actually like, and this really helps me catch little bugs before they go to production. And again, this is why I love Jest so much. I thought it was, if you've done big projects, big enterprise projects with Lightning Web Components, I swear they rain bugs down because of little stuff like this, where you didn't validate, so. And it ends up being a lot of throwing stuff over the wall, seeing what the BA is fine. So once again, Jest proves its value. So we're going to change that to we expected lowercase. And in this case, though, I think it actually makes more sense to have that as uppercase. Let's run it again. What? I screwed my assertion up. I swear, people actually pay me money to do this. All right, let's run this again. Let's get a green arrow, and let's call this one done. What now? Okay, this is killing me, right? You could tell it's time for me to go, right? I am just missing all the little syntax. There's an exclamation point in there, apparently. So this is all the real development magic. You can see how I spend my day fixing my own little typos. So that's it. That is our intro to Jest testing. We covered just doing a simple test on a JavaScript function in a standalone file. And then testing that a web component rendered correctly in the default state. And that took us about 20 minutes. So we're going to wrap it up. And in the next video, we'll finish up the next 2 tests where we start to test for the DOM rendering correctly after updates. Hope this was helpful. Please take a second, hit like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.